Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals. And really cool people come on to help us. Like today, we are welcoming Dave Wolcott. He is a serial entrepreneur, which I can totally relate to. Serial entrepreneur at heart. He's spent the last 20 years building several businesses. Man, we might be related here because I've done the same stuff. He has spent those years investing in alternative assets and creating the Pantheon Holistic Wealth Strategy, which is the playbook to becoming ultra wealthy. Yes, let's do that. And having not only freedom of money, but freedom of purpose, time, and relationship. And Dave, it's not just a playbook anymore, right? It's like a physical book, right?
Yeah, it is a physical book. That was a long journey, Christine, probably about two plus years to produce a book. But yeah, we just rolled out actually just last month, and we're Amazon #1 bestseller in financial engineering, which was pretty cool.
Congratulations. What fun.
Thanks.
Yeah, book is quite a process, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an amazing process. And, you get smarter. I think if you do, when I do my second one, it'll be easier. It's all about, it's just like a business actually, or a project where you can create a team. And if you can have the right people in the right places, supporting you, it's a lot easier from that standpoint.
Yeah. And also I feel like you have to get yourself out of that, constant editor mode. That was my
Yeah.
problem is like, you'd write a sentence and you're like, that's not the perfect sentence. Let me just write that again. Right. And you're just like, no, write the whole thing. Then you can go back when everything flows together. So it's like, I don't know about you. I wrote the same book like four or five times.
Mhm.
Like, okay, I don't like that version. That goes in the trash. Let's start over. But yeah, it
It's
definitely
part of
helps
the
to have a team.
entrepreneurial trap. Dan Sullivan calls it being a rugged individualist, where as an entrepreneur, you think you can do everything faster, better, cheaper than everyone else. So you try to do it all, right? Which is sometimes not good when you're trying to scale a business.
That's for sure. And I'm laughing today because I actually moved house today. And so I was thinking like these movers are good, but let me just move this thing for you because I'm just afraid that, you're not going to do as good a job moving it as I would do. No, Chris, let the movers move. Right. And it
Exactly.
can be hard, right, to let go. So I'm really attracted to the idea of holistic wealth, right? I feel like, I want you to explain a little bit more about what it is, but I feel like so often it's just like, you have to have this, you're going to do this thing, especially if I listen to the fire people, a lot of times it's like, okay, you can only spend 4% of your wealth. So you need to save, I think I need to save like $5 or $6 million and just put that in the bank and live off of it at 4% a year. And it's like, that's just not my thing. That's not, I think, even realistic for most people unless they happen to invest in the right thing at the right time. But when you say like holistic wealth, what does that sort of mean to the people who you work with, your
Yeah,
clients?
that's such a great question, Christine, right? And I ask myself that a lot, right? And maybe it'll help the audience if we just kind of back up a little bit, and I can give you a little bit about my background and kind of my journey and how I kind of arrived at some of these observations. So I was raised in a middle-class family in Connecticut, probably like, a lot of folks out there. And I was told that the recipe for success was go to school, get good grades, you're going to get a job, and life would just work out. Right. So I kind of followed down that path. I did the ROTC program in college, and had the opportunity to serve my country in the Marine Corps. So that was a phenomenal experience. Got to learn a lot of things, and things that they don't really teach you anywhere else in the world, things such as leadership, teamwork, and integrity, right, which are so important. And then I transitioned into the tech industry and, started to kind of build my career there. And I was quickly really frustrated with the bureaucracy of corporate America. I also lost that sense of purpose that I had, in the Marines, that was really so meaningful to kind of what I was doing. And at the same time, my wife and I started building our family. We had an 18-month-old at the time. And on October 24th, 2000, we literally won the baby lottery and had triplets. So it was completely crazy, still is to this day. It's like something you read about in the newspaper. But we quadrupled the size of our family overnight. And so the first thing that was on my mind was, how am I going to provide for financial security for my family? I mean, I was just hit, right over the head with that. So the first thing I did was go see my financial planner. I mean, he told me what every other planner just kept saying was, oh, you've got all these kids, you could just put money in 529 plans for them, max out your 401k. Oh, by the way, your, accumulation number just like doubled, right, to, what you need. And you know, just invest in the long term in the market. And so I got really frustrated with that response, Christine. And then I think the entrepreneur in me really wanted to solve the problem was, how are the ultra wealthy really building wealth? Because I knew it wasn't as a passive investor in the real estate, in the stock market. Right. So then I spent the next 20 years basically investing in alternative assets, everything from raw land to oil and gas, office buildings, multifamily, syndications, lots of different, private investments. And then I also started building business. I built a tech consulting company, which I ran for a number of years and fully exited that, and learned a lot about taxes running businesses. So that was really interesting as well. And so fast forward to today, and really the book is really an instantiation of all of those things that I've learned over the past 20 years, right? And to try to create a blueprint for other people to figure out, how can you really accelerate your journey, right? Because we read these books, like we read Kiyosaki's books and we say, this is so great. And I get it conceptually, but what's next, right? Like, how do I put this into action? So, my intention was to try to build a system out of building wealth like the 1% are doing in the book.
Yeah. And it's easier said than done, right? Because in a way you're fighting against these messages that you've been told, right, since you're a kid. Oh, just work for the same company and, you'll get promoted and then you'll get a pension. Like, a what? Right. I mean, this whole, the way we were kind of taught to think about money, right? Put it in the stock market and some conservative investment, and then, it's just magically going to appear when you need it. But it just doesn't work that way. But was it hard for you to say, especially with, 4 young children? Because you'd had one and then you had your triplets. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So how did you get your brain around the idea of just saying, okay, I'm going to take this risk and walk out on this little limb that, it was new to you, right? I mean, had you ever done anything like that before?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my background was in sales, right? So, I think that was helpful. I had the leadership background, but probably the, biggest insight I got early on was really Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, and understanding, how money really works. And the fact that I needed to be a business owner and I needed to be an investor, right? Because you're positioned for the most tax efficient place. And really that's how this virtual life cycle works, of buying assets that, work for you. You keep buying assets, keep reducing your taxes. So I knew that was there, but still pretty difficult to figure out, okay, what business am I going to go in? When am I going to start? Who am I going to have the capital? Am I going to partner with people? All of those things. And I think most entrepreneurs really start businesses based on building something from, right? Basically from your relationships, from your experience, things like that. So that was, what I actually built too. And then Pantheon is actually a business that I built too, which is a business that's really all about, my unique ability. It's all about my values and my goals and the culture that we can create, and then really trying to create impact for other people.
Why do you think? I mean, I feel like a lot of this, the things that you learned from Robert Kiyosaki and from probably other people once you started your journey, it's all readily available, but yet there are still people working 3 and 4 and 5 jobs and just thinking that they need to save up to be rich. So when you start working with people, what's the first thing that you sort of, how's the process work that you take them through to kind of get them to leave all that BS behind?
Yeah, so you just nailed it, Christine, right? So the first thing that we have that underpins the entire holistic wealth strategy is getting crystal clear on your vision statement, right? Because if you don't have a target, you're going to miss every time. And we're all so inundated with media, news, busyness, this and that, all the time, that we just don't spend enough time, really creating our futures, with our families. But when you can do that, and you understand, Peter Diamandis calls it your massive transformational purpose. Like, what do you want to do in 25 years that, that really fascinates and motivates you, And another way to answer this question is a great way to look at it is to just say, okay, if you had $1 billion, what would you be doing? Where would you be? And who would you be with? And just take away the money and really understand, what is your purpose? What is your vision? And once you get clarity on that, you're jumping out of bed every day to be fired up to, make an impact and be fulfilled.
Yeah, exactly. But do you find that comes naturally to the people when you're working with them, or?
I think it's challenging, right? Because of, again, a lot of, societal pressures, things that are going on, we're all kind of busy with. So we always start there, right? Because everyone has a different vision and what that really means to them. But it gives it that power and that passion when you have that vision to then be able to start to take action into some of these steps. And that's what gets you through to the other side.
Yeah. So now let's go back to holistic. Like when you're talking about a holistic investment, what's like an example of that would make it be holistic versus just your sort of regular old Wall Street type investment?
Yeah, so we have 5 phases to the holistic wealth strategy. There are 5 simple phases. And the first one actually really starts with mindset. So kind of as you alluded to earlier, why is it that some people take action, other people don't? In fact, the majority, probably 95% of the people say, you know what, my financial planner, I'm good with them. I've been with them for 10 years. I've got a good relationship. This is all good. What you're talking about sounds too risky, right? So it all really comes down to mindset. Mindset is really 80-90% of everything. And even when you think about it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what's the difference between an Elon Musk and a Steve Jobs with, some of the other people maybe you went to high school with that might actually be in the same town, in the same circle of friends, working at the same company for so long. It's mindset, right? I mean, you have to really be able to change that. So it's critical as an investor, if you want to, do something new, you have to be really open-minded and have a growth mindset on saying, you know what, okay, I might look at investing in real estate or an alternative asset. And once I understand it, maybe it could actually do better. But let me make an objective opinion. But if you don't have the right mindset, you're never going to get out of the gate. So just keep doing what you're doing with your planner.
Exactly. It's amazing because I am a real estate agent and I talk to people about real estate investing. And every time I do like a seminar, somebody says, oh, my grandfather invested in real estate and, the tenants didn't pay and he ended up losing the property and stuff like that. It's like, and it's not even always the grandfather. It's like, my cousin's nephew's friends. Like, okay, so one person, failed in real estate. And that means that no one can succeed. People are succeeding. Who cares about, this other person who didn't succeed? It's just so easy to get into here's an excuse, right? Here's a reason, here's a person, an example of how it definitely couldn't work for me. Like, you're right. Absolutely cannot work for you if you're going to go at it with that attitude.
Yeah, exactly. So the mindset is really phase 1. And then the second phase, we talk about really trying to increase your IQ in multiple dimensions. So we look at increasing your financial IQ, like understanding some of these, alternative investments. We actually have an oil and gas fund that is 100% tax deductible against active income, right?
Wow.
So put your head around that, right? So that's, instant money there. It pays, monthly dividends, and also has a multiple on the back end as they sell the assets, right? So, who knew, right? I mean, nobody really talks about oil and gas investing as a direct investor. So increasing your financial IQ is really important. We talked about mindset IQ. And if mindset is everything, then how much time are you spending in a day and a week trying to grow your mindset? And then also, yeah, from a holistic perspective, there's health, right? How much money would Steve Jobs have paid to be able to solve his health challenges,
Any
right?
amount of money, right?
How much would Warren Buffett be able to pay, right now, right? Your health is everything, and it helps you drive you, towards your vision. But often, sadly, people are actually expending their wealth, their health to achieve wealth,
Right.
which is really pretty sad. So I think having a strong foundation, of your health and investing in you. And part of this, Christine, is really recognizing the fact that you are your greatest asset, right? So anytime you invest in yourself, whether it's learning, health, mindset, all of these different things, you're going to get, every time I invest in myself, I get a 10x return,
Right.
like undoubtedly.
Yeah.
So that's a really important distinction. And then I think relationship capital is also super important, because you are a product of the 5 people you spend your time with. So are those people taking you closer to your goals? Do they represent more of your future self or your past self?
Yeah, that's a great point. And sometimes it's a little difficult to cut those ties, or to, right, to recognize, I'm spending time with these people, and and they're doubting everything, they're bringing me down, they're making me feel, right, negative things, and we're just harping about the news or whatever, versus people who are saying, oh, I'm going to this seminar, I'm learning this thing, or I'm, join this mastermind. And right, it's just a completely different group of people that, and I don't know if you even, when you're in the midst of it, people might not even recognize, because you're so used to that, right? You're so used to just like, oh, we have to complain about the news, and we have to, like, oh, gas prices, right? When people were talking about gas prices, I was like, I'm just really grateful that I can still fill my tank every single day, and I don't have to think
Mhm.
twice about it, right? And I say to people, can you fill your tank? Can you afford to fill your tank? Well, yeah, but it's expensive. But you can afford to fill your tank. So
Mhm.
isn't that great? I mean, some people probably can't. So just say, great. Hey, this is an awesome opportunity for me to be grateful that I can fill my tank with gas, right? And I can afford the groceries, the $5 eggs or whatever it is, I mean, whatever the thing is that everybody's complaining about this week. It's like, wow, awesome. I
Well,
don't
here's
even look at
another,
the egg price. Is that great?
yeah,
I love
I
that.
mean,
Right?
here's another great, analogy. It's like, age is an attitude. I mean, how many people do you know get together and all they do is talks about their aches and pains and all the things that are not working out well, right? But I can tell you that every athletic event I've done and the people that I spend time, like I do a lot of cycling. I mean, there's people decade and more older than me, outperforming me, as much work as I put into everything. And, we don't talk about that, right? It's an attitude. So when you can get with those like-minded people, again, that are trying to take you towards your vision, you can really take off like a rocket ship.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I turned 60 this year. And so I'm sort of the same. I go through this a lot with people. You're like, this idea of people my age, people younger than me, and they're all like, they're all in their knees and their back, and they're this and they're that and the other thing. And it's just like, and then, oh, but you're lucky. Yeah, of course I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I go to the gym, and I'm lucky that I'm lucky that I'm active. And that's not luck, hello. But yeah, it's, age is definitely such a state of mind. And I love seeing that. Right, like you say, you're at an event, and like, here goes some 75-year-old person on this bike, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
that I want to be that person. I was actually the other day, I was showing somebody some houses and this couple went by and they were, I don't know, they were high, it had to be high 70s and they were cycling by and just like happy and just having a great time. You're like, yep, that's going to be me.
Oh yeah. No, my goal is actually to live to 116. So I have it clear. So I haven't even hit, I just turned 53 this year. And I actually just did my biological age testing through a DNA
Yeah.
test. And I'm 10 years younger. So I'm only at 43, right?
Yeah.
So again, by focusing on these things like holistically and being proactive about it, I mean, I theoretically just added 10 years to my life, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
how
amazing.
powerful is that?
Yep. It's my aunt lived to be 105, so I had sort of had that as my number, but I think I have a healthier lifestyle than she does, so maybe I'll add 5 years to that. But you don't
Nice.
want to be that age and be right. You want to be that age and be active,
Yeah,
right? You want to
exactly.
die in a marathon, right? At
Yeah.
116 or whatever.
Yeah, you have your health span.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
then we move into the third phase, which is all about building a team and creating infrastructure around your wealth.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we're all thinking about yield, like what's the ROI on this particular investment? We want to go after this, but you also have to think about how do you mitigate the top three wealth destroyers. So number one, it's taxes. Number two, it's stock market losses over time. And number three, it's actually government sponsored qualified plans like 401ks and IRAs that tell you how, when you can access your money, what you're going to be paying in taxes, which, by the way, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think with all the spending that there's going on, taxes are likely going to be higher in the future.
Yeah.
Right. So how can you mitigate some of those things now? And also, just think about from an asset protection standpoint, we spend all this time kind of, building wealth, but are we also protecting our wealth? Right. That's really critically important
Yeah.
with some things as well. So I think building some of that infrastructure, and having a strategy around your wealth is really important. These are how family offices, ultra high net worth, I mean, they have rock solid teams that support this entire strategy.
Yeah. And I love the tax piece. Tell me more about that oil and gas fund where it's zero taxes. How does that work?
Yeah. So essentially, I mean, I think a lot of people, first of all, don't understand taxes. And I didn't understand taxes either until I got really tired of paying, really large tax bills, keep hiring, CPAs that charged more and more and everything. But you really need to make a paradigm shift in terms of taxes, right? Because there's 6,000 pages of tax code. One page says, hey, if you're a W-2 employee, here's the tax rate. This is what it is. The
Yeah.
other 5,999 pages are actually a roadmap of incentives for business owners and investors, right? Which ties right back to Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. So when you can kind of understand what those are, the government is incentivizing you to partner with them because they're trying to drive the economy, right? It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So on the energy side and oil and gas, I mean, there's incentives have been around since the Reagan era where, if we're driving, investment into the energy sector, you can actually, as a general partner in having a working interest in a fund, you can write off up to 100% of your investment because it's going towards natural resources that are supporting our GDP, our strategic defenses, all of these types of things. And as much as I'm for green energy and all of that, it still realistically hasn't made a dent in the demand that we have in this country. So yeah, we've been a big proponent of that. And then also, when I think of from like an investing kind of thesis, right? If you go back to Maslow's hierarchy, right, and you think about the bottom layer of the needs, it's like food, shelter, water, energy, right? It doesn't matter where you live on the planet, what industry you're in, how old you are. you need energy, right, to support everything. And even the lipstick and the makeup that you're wearing is petroleum based, right? So it goes into everything, not only the fuel in your car. So I think this is an interesting time. I think there's peaks and valleys in investing in energy, but right now there's been a lot of underinvestment in the sector from since COVID era. And, we think that there's a good, good macro conditions right now to be able to invest in this asset class.
What is the most, when you look at the alternative investments that you either invest in or that you offer as part of your Pantheon, the thing that you think is the most unusual, or the thing that when you learned about it, you thought, oh man, this is really exciting? Or what fires you up? What are your favorite investments, your favorite parts of the investment of your portfolio?
So that's a really good question. And maybe if we could just hold that, and because I think it'll just be a little more sequential. If we can go through phase 4 and then
Oh, I'm
phase
sorry.
5 is really
Yes.
there. Yeah, no, I think
Sorry, let's do that.
it'll just tie together for the audience better.
Perfect.
So in phase 4, a lot of people might say, okay, now I have the right mindset. I've learned a lot about different alternatives. I'm ready to go. I started to work on an infrastructure. And then we talk about asset repositioning, because you might have money in 401ks. You might have money tied up in your primary residence, right, in trapped equity. So what we look to do is try to add more efficiency through, tax efficiency, velocity, and things like that, in getting into some of these investments. And when we invest, we're also looking to have a multiplier with your capital. So like one of the things, for instance, we didn't talk about on the infrastructure side was infinite banking, if you're familiar with that concept. So we help our clients set those policies up as well, which is a cash value life insurance policy. But what's really cool is, your capital compounds completely tax-free. You give it to your heirs tax-free. It's got asset protection to it. You can borrow against it to invest in real estate to amplify your returns, or you can borrow against it for whatever you want, right? And it's even safer than a bank these days.
Yeah.
And you can also create a reverse, income stream. So like I just rattled off like 6 things off the top of my head that the benefits out of deploying $1 of capital. So when we and this is kind of leading into what you're talking about, is that, the ultra wealthy, every time they deploy $1 of capital, it's being leveraged in multiple different ways. They're getting multiple different benefits out of it. So then what you do is you get this like exponential effect. And when you can tie this entire thing into a strategy, this is all about a process of building wealth. This is not like, hey, we're gonna win the lottery, or we're gonna exit our company and it's all unicorns and rainbows, right? But it's about building like a solid infrastructure that can actually really last for generations, and really having, those values you want to pass on, as part of your legacy. So I don't think there's one particular investment or anything that I've necessarily said, hey, this is the end all be all, but it's a matter of putting all these things together. You've got tax savings, you've got asset protection, you've got tax-free compounding. When we get into these alternative investments, you've got growth, you've got equity growth, you've got cash flow, right? You have all these different dimensions, and what happens is it all starts to snowball. And it starts to become pretty crazy, right? In terms of having your money working for you, and multiple dimensions.
So what about step 5?
Yeah, so step 5 is actually taking action. So building massive passive income through investing in different opportunities. And over the years, I've found that, most of these opportunities are available to accredited investors only. If you're not accredited, I think there's things people can do like, house hacking, single family rentals, Airbnb rentals, all kinds of things, which are a great way to build up some equity to get to your first million. Okay. But once you get to your first million in portfolio value, then you can become an accredited investor and you can start investing in these bigger deals where you can take a stake in a 300 unit apartment building, right, in a top market that you've had. There's a top acquisitions person that found an off-market deal, right? You've got a top-notch asset manager. You have an entire team that you're exposed to in a new market, right, that you didn't even have access to because it's not in your backyard. So getting into, some of these syndications, we typically, again, we're looking for what we call asymmetric returns, so low risk, high return. So multifamily has been historically very recession resilient and decent returns, has done very well. Self-storage is another asset class that we've invested in, very strong cash flow, low expenses, very recession resistant. The oil and gas we have, and actually right now we're even taking advantage of the banking crisis and getting into private credit with merchant cash advance business. So it's basically private lending to small businesses because the banks aren't lending. So now they can jump on our private credit lending, and we can provide very healthy double-digit returns just coming on this lending platform.
Yeah. Wow. So is that was a question I had, and it sounds like you answered it as far as like if someone wanted to get started with you, if they wanted to actually start to pursue some of these exciting scenarios, it's like $1 million is going to have to be in assets though, not in cash, right?
Yeah, just to be an accredited investor, most of our opportunities, you have to be an accredited investor, which the definition of that is you've either made 200K in income over the past 2 years by salary, or 300K jointly with your wife, or you have $1 million in portfolio value outside of your primary residence and net worth. Yeah.
Right. And who do you think is your ideal person? I mean, I'm sure you love to get people when they're young and they're just kind of getting started and you can have so much impact, but is there sort of an avatar of person who you really love to attract and work with?
Absolutely. We really focus a lot on entrepreneurs because they really think differently, right? And they're open to new ideas, and they can be more creative about, learning about different approaches and everything. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our community, but there's still many other, plenty of doctors that are very entrepreneurial because they have their own business too, right? Or they have different specific skill sets in addition to that. But a lot of entrepreneurs really just, have that mindset. They were born with it, I think.
Yeah, it's true. We're not like the others. Do you find that any of these steps is sort of where people's resistance comes in, or once you start working with them, is it sort of full speed ahead?
It's really interesting because I think you can come in at any one of these stages. Like sometimes people might just say, okay, I just invested in the first deal, right? They want to just go right away.
Right.
I'm investing in this thing. This is great. But then they realize later on they don't really have a liquidity strategy. So then we help them set up the infinite banking as an example.
Yeah.
They invested in, let's say this credit fund, but they want to learn how to reduce their taxes more. So we start working through, some different tax strategy and different options and things like that. So I think it's a very evolutionary process. You can probably get engaged in it at whatever level, but I've seen the most successful. I mean, some of our investors, it's been phenomenal over the years to watch the growth. I mean, literally have changed their entire thinking, their entire strategy to this strategy. And I've seen multiple 7 figures of success with people who get this. And the timing couldn't be better, like, because I have these people reposition their whole portfolios out of the market like 3 years ago before the market started going down. So I get lots of Christmas cards and, people People are really thanking me from that perspective. And, but it's great because they actually took action, and that's what's most rewarding for me.
Yeah. So are you sort of 100% Pantheon right now? Are you doing
Oh,
anything else?
yes.
Any side
No,
hustles?
no, this is it. And in fact, I mean, we keep adding, more and more ways. Every day I wake up, Christine, and I think about how can we create more value for our community. So this year we just launched actually a mastermind and a virtual family office. So
Nice.
basically for like the top 10% of our customers, it's a like-minded group of people getting together, going way deep on these topics, solving these, problems, creating a network, of people. And then we've also brought in, this curated team of that I've built for literally over 20 years. I have a top-notch proactive CPA firm that is supporting us, right? So he's one of the faculty members on our team. We have someone who worked in a family office for 15 years, managing, families with 100 million in net worth, right? He's on our faculty talking about advanced planning, estate planning, very sophisticated concepts. We have one of the top asset protection attorneys in the country that's a member. So people can engage with these folks at any level, right? But you don't have to have 100 million net worth to be able to access them.
But that's how you get 100 million, is by accessing those people, right? They just think different.
It's totally different. You have to understand, I mean, if you're playing this game, and I'm sure your audience, I mean, really gets it, and that's why they're fans of yours too, is that, we're going against the grain. I mean, 98% of the people out there are just saying, okay, I'm just going to trust, my financial advisor, put everything into the market, and then do this 60-40 split. And really, like you said earlier, right, that if you save for that accumulation theory, what it actually drives is scarcity, because you're actually thinking for this, big scenario of like, I can't do anything until I'm 65 and I can access this money. But look, I want to live my life today. I want access to my capital. And I'll share with you and the listeners like a really simple example that will help kind of, show the juxtaposition between these two theses, right? So that traditional planning model, let's say you accumulated 4 million in net worth, okay? And they tell you, like you said, 4%, right? Using the Monte Carlo simulation, which it's actually lower than that right now, but we'll stay conservative. We'll go with 4%. So you might think that, wow, I did a pretty good job. I, accumulated 4 million over my career, and, we're going to be set. Well, 4 million, 4% of 4 million is what? 160K. The biggest thing people are underestimating is your taxes, right? We haven't even talked about fees and inflation, right, which still eat into that. But if you just consider taxes at that point, your 160K is probably more like 110, 110. So
Hey,
you're
if I have
thinking,
4 million
wow,
bucks in the bank, I want to be living on more than $110,000 a year,
110,000 a year, right? Then it is really going to be a problem to pay at the pump, right? With
Right.
with gas prices. And what do you do at that stage, right? You're not going to want to maybe do a side hustle when you're 75 or something. So that's scenario one, what they're all advocating, right? In stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And so if you take this alternative scenario that we're talking about, you could, let's say you had 4 million across a dozen different syndications that are conservative, say apartment buildings, self-storage, things like this.
Yeah.
They're paying 8% in cash flow, and they're appreciating 10% or more. Okay. So now you actually, the 8% on 4 million is double. So now you have 320K of income. And if that income is actually structured properly in those investments, you're not paying taxes on it.
Right.
So now you have 320K of income. And then the kicker on top of this is that you're actually, that entire 4 million is appreciating every year. Instead of killing your golden goose, You
Exactly.
keep
Right. You're
feeding
not
it.
selling stock in order to live this
Exactly.
lifestyle, which sucks
This,
anyway, because it's
yeah, this is how you create legacy wealth, right? And keep growing it, right? And create that virtuous cycle. So it's a good simple example, I think, for people to kind of, if they're new to this whole concept, this is what the wealthy have known for many years, but sadly, there's just not enough information out there that really, talks about this thesis or really puts it all together, I think, in a succinct way that people can take action.
right. It's out there, but I think it's maybe, I don't want to say in code, right? But it's not something that the layperson is going to even know that they should be searching for,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So if you could, so let's just say that you're talking to someone who isn't ready yet to be one of your clients. They're not quite at that asset class where they're going to be, an accredited investor. What is one tip that you would give to that person just to sort of help them to get to get to a better place?
sure.
Something they could implement today or next week and, that would help them.
Yeah, it's all about investing in yourself first, right? So again, with that concept of thinking that you are your greatest asset, what books can you learn, right? What new people can you meet? What new ideas can you get exposed to, right? And be thinking about that. And I can tell you, it's never too early to learn. Like in our household, as our kids were growing up, we would share these ideas openly, and I can't tell you how rewarding it is to see. So my oldest daughter is 24. She's 2 years out of college, and she put in college the money she was saving up from her job and everything. Then she started an infinite banking policy. So she put capital into that and funded that. She graduated, borrowed money out of the policy to use for a down payment to buy her first property, a single family home in Tennessee with her boyfriend. They bought that house. They spent a year kind of doing renovations, sweat equity. They built up $100K in equity. They're now renting it for $1,400 a month, cash flow positive, and they bought their second property. And I mean, look, these guys just improved their balance sheet, their passive income, and she's literally 2 years out of college,
Amazing.
right? So
Yeah.
it can be done for sure.
Yeah. And, and you have to take a minute and pat yourself on the back for that, Dave, because maybe she would have done that remarkable stuff if you hadn't started your life by doing all this research. But I'm sure growing up in that household had a huge impact.
Appreciate that.
So, what's the best way for people to get your book?
Yeah, so you can pick it up on Amazon or any other book retailer. It's called The Holistic Wealth Strategy. But if you go to our website also, you can go to pantheoninvest.com/wealth-strategy. And we actually have some free bonus book materials. We have a 401k exit calculator, which we didn't even talk about, but it's fascinating to see what you can do, even if you pay your 10% a penalty and redeploy that capital into some of these kind of deals. So we have that passive income calculator, some other cool goodies in there. And by the way, all proceeds for the book are going towards thefund.org, which is our charity for veterans, those that have been injured or critically injured. So really appreciate everyone's support.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dave, I've loved talking with you. And I love when I talk to people who sort of get my mind thinking in all kinds of new directions and expand my thinking. And I know that the audience does too. But what is a question that you wish I would have asked you that we haven't touched on yet?
Oh, that's an interesting question. No, I like the last one, and I think I would really like to leave listeners with that, is just really, invest in yourself, right? And really, get clear on what your vision is. I was talking to someone earlier today on another podcast interview, which he was actually diagnosed with cancer
Oh
when
God.
he was in his 30s.
Oh,
And they came back with that diagnosis. He only had 6 months to live. And I mean, how many times have you heard it, right? We've heard of chronic illness, loss of a loved one. And it takes some big moment like that for people to really change the trajectory of their lives. Whether you're not happy in a relationship, you're not happy in your current job or your career setting, I just urge people to just, really get clear on what your vision is and take action today. If you're not happy, then figure out a way to get out of that, even if it takes you a year or 3 years, right? Start taking action today.
it's true. And I wonder if in your case, was it the triplets that were sort of your catalyst to say, I can't
Yes,
just work at this normal company anymore. I'm going to be broke my whole life.
they were for sure, because like I said, I had to provide for, I felt so, deeply moved by that sense of, financial, be able to provide the financial security for my family. And I had, big goals and aspirations, and this 7% a year in this accumulation strategy just completely rubbed me wrong. And then as you really start to unpack it, a lot of their assumptions just don't even make sense, Christine. Deferring taxes. Everyone thinks that's a tax strategy, deferring your taxes.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't you
Hoping that
rather
you'll be,
pay?
betting that taxes will be lower later. Sure, that's going to happen.
Yeah, because they're assuming that you're going to retire poor, because they say that, oh, you're going to have like less income, you'll have less deductions. But I don't want to make less when I'm older by any chance. I want to continue to make more and live a life of abundance, right? But I
Exactly.
think you want to pay taxes on the seed rather than the harvest, right? Is so important, right? So kind of figuring that out, up front is really key.
Yeah. It's funny. I heard somebody saying the other day, oh, I'm looking forward to paying more taxes because that means that I'm more financially successful, that I have more money. And I'm thinking, that's not how I don't like that. I don't like that strategy.
They
No,
wouldn't cross the mindset test with that one. Yeah, for sure.
definitely not. Yeah, I can't wait to give more of my money to the government. Yeah, bring it on. Pass. I like to see every oh, there yeah, never mind. Much rather I actually I used to work at the IRS very, very early in my career.
Hmm.
And I was processing this tax return, and the person had sent in a check for $1 million. And I was like, holy crap, how much did this person earn this year that they're paying $1 million in taxes? And I looked and they had made 6 million. And I thought, actually, that's pretty good to
Hmm.
only be paying 1 million on a $6 million income. Like, okay, this person's got a good accountant. But
Yeah. Do you know that like top corporations, they have on staff sometimes like 1,000 tax people working on tax mitigation,
and
right?
it's
I mean,
totally worth it, right?
yeah, exactly. But again, it's, this is all about partnering with the government and understanding what
Yeah,
they're looking to do.
exactly.
So, they're not, it's creating a strategy. Right? So,
But and that's a very nice way to think about it, because you're partnering with the government. You're not trying to take advantage of them. You're not looking for a loophole. You're actually behaving the way they want you to behave for the betterment of the economy.
exactly.
It's our duty to pay less taxes.
Yes.
Excellent. Dave, thank you so much for being with us. It's been great talking to you. And I know, listeners, that you have enjoyed listening to Dave as much as I have. So why don't you think of somebody who needs to get booted out of their current situation and needs to start changing their mindset, or somebody who's already in a great place and needs to hear from Dave, and forward this episode to them to share. And Dave, any last thoughts?
Just thank you for the time, Christine. Grateful for the opportunity to connect with you and your listeners.
And thank you. And thanks everybody for joining. Have a wonderful week.